I see a lot of people pronouncing Latin in many different ways, even though we pretty much know how it is pronounced. So I'm just going to clear some stuff up here. I'm going to be using the International Phonetic Alphabet for this, so if you don't know that, it may be a bit difficult. Although I'll explain the vowels more so, since the IPA doesn't categorize the vowels there very precisely, and so it's hard to tell how to pronounce them. Here are the consonants. I'll say the name of each letter. B, K, D, F, G, H, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, X. By the way, I've omitted the letters directly from Greek. The rest are from Greek, through Etruscan. Let's start with the obvious that everyone knows about, K and G, or C and G in English. These, at least in classical Latin, are always hard consonants, so they're not pronounced like a S or a CH or th before a front vowel like in the Romance languages. Actually, let's make a timeline for this. And quick side note, Sardinian broke away from Latin before the Romance languages around here, so it doesn't have the soft C sound even now. Sardinian is a really interesting language in general, actually. It still has some influence from the pre-Roman Italian languages. Italian languages is something different than Italic. Italic means something very specific, but we'll get into that some other time. Okay, back to the topic. There is some controversy, however, on whether the K sound, or the letter K, was aspirated or not. You see, aspiration is when a pataka sound has a little puff of air after it. You may not know it, but this happens at the beginning of words in English. So the P in pit is aspirated, but the P in spin is not. This happens in stressed syllables as well, like in the word return. The T sound there is aspirated. The aspiration in Latin is debated because in a few often colloquial words, the Greek ka, which was contrasted with the aspirated ka in Greek, was loaned as a voiced consonant in Latin. For example, guberno, derived from Greek gubernao. And this uncertainty is true of all the stop consonants. So this is evidence that unaspirated voiceless plosives were relatively close to voiced consonants. But you can argue it either way, unaspirated or aspirated each. Now aside from C and G, there are a few consonants, that cause problems. And those are gwa, gwa, ta, and da. A lot of people make the gwa sound wrong. It's a lot like the gwa sound in English, say quote, but in English you pronounce the wa sound after the ka sound. So you say ka, then you say wa. In Latin you pronounce it at the same time. That's the only difference. This may seem like a nitpick, and yes, it is, since these sounds are almost identical. In English too, there's a bit of co-articulation. The Romans themselves called it confusa, or blended. And because they are pronounced at the same time as one sound, it counts as one consonant in the poetic meter. Until it changed to the consonant cluster qua in the 4th century. Also, calling it a single sound comes from the fact that qua seems to act a lot like one sound in the phonotactics. But in case you don't know what phonotactics are, that'll take a bit to explain. Something interesting is that this sound is reconstructed as being in Proto-Italic as well. This is because of how it developed in Oscan-Umbrian, where the labialization grew so strong that the qua became entirely labial, ba. The T sound. Like the letter K, don't pronounce it like a th or sa or th before a front vowel like in some of the Romance languages. If you want to be classical, just pronounce it like a normal T. However, I will say that it can be either dental or alveolar, and these are a few of the reasons on screen. Gwa and da are pronounced just like gwa and da, but voiced. The rest are pretty quick. Voiced plosives, pronounce them the same as their voiceless counterparts. Check. I can just cross that out since it's only in the Greek loanwords. F, same as English. That's it. S, same as English, except it may or may not be dental, just like T. Ha, same as English, although H stopped being pronounced in the 1st century, so I'm just going to put that down my timeline. The nasals, I'm going to come back to this later. R could have been either alveolar or dental. Basically, it's the same as in either Italian or Swedish. Although, in Old Latin, it could have been a tap, kind of like a letter T in American pronunciation of water. L. There are two phonetic sounds here. The clear L and the dark L. The clear appears in the word look in English, while the dark L appears in the word all. The conditions depend on the English dialect, though. The main source I use, Vox Latina, doesn't say much about this alternation in Latin. The dark L, either plenus or pinguis in Latina seems to occur after back vowels, and the clear L, exilis, in Latin seems to occur after front vowels. I'll quote from the text directly. We are thus able to reconstruct the different pronunciations of Latin L with some accuracy, only to conclude that the rules are basically the same as for modern English. And and were semivowels, so I'll get to them when I get to vowels. Next video, I'll dive into how vowels are pronounced, and how the nasals N and M affect the vowels in Latin all the way from the plebeians to the aristocrats. If you want to know about anything that I mentioned in this video whatsoever, go down to the description, and I made a document of my sources.